Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So grateful to be joined by our partners here at the county, at the state, and federal levels outside of the General Services Administration building here in Washington, D.C. We just wrapped up making our case to the GSA and also to the FBI about why the new FBI headquarters belongs in the state of Maryland. As you can see here, we stand unified as one team, as Team Maryland, representing various areas, and we think making a very important pitch and a very important statement. Because here we know we are talking about a legacy-defining choice. The most significant infrastructure build in the history of the GSA and the most significant physical infrastructure reopening and structure build since the Pentagon and also since the CIA building, which both, by the way, were done in Virginia and have been true catalysts for the measure of economic growth that we have seen inside of Virginia. Where the Biden administration decides to put the new FBI headquarters will inform the mission, the growth, and also the efficacy of the Bureau, not just for this year, but for years to come. And we are certain that bringing the FBI to Maryland is the right choice. It's the right choice in terms of timeline and cost. It's the right choice in terms of transportation. It's the right choice on advancing the FBI's mission. And it's the right choice on equity. And today, my colleagues laid out the case to the public and laid out our case to the GSA and the FBI step by step. That when we're talking about timeline and cost, we informed them that both Maryland sites will be built faster and cheaper than the Virginia sites, upwards of 2 to 4 years faster, because the sites in Maryland are actually build ready, unlike the Virginia sites. When we talked about transportation, we informed them that both Maryland sites are right next to public transit. That when we're talking about the FBI's mission, especially where Director Wray says that the future of the FBI's mission will rely heavily on cyber, that we know that Maryland has the brain power, the bandwidth, and the infrastructure with the NSA, the U.S. Cyber Command, top universities like Bowie State, the University of Maryland College Park, and also Johns Hopkins to be able to fulfill that mission. And when we're talking about equity, we inform that the Biden administration has put a real focus on advancing racial equity, making it front and center from day one, and now the president has a chance to honor that commitment with action. So by selecting Maryland, this is about much more than where to just put a building. It's about much more than just where this infrastructure will last. This is about making the right decision for today and also the right decision for the future. And we're very serious when we say that Maryland is the best possible site for the FBI on every single criteria that they laid out. And any reasonable person will look at our candidacy and understand its strength. But right now, we know that Maryland and Virginia are not competing on equal footing. Not because of anything that Maryland lacks, but because the selection process that was changed in last September gives away points to our friends across the Potomac. So today, we ask that the GSA and the FBI ensure that this process is fair. We ask that they ensure that this process is transparent. We ask that this process is consistent with the intent of Congress and also the priorities of the Biden administration. And we are eager to hear from the White House and their perspective on this issue as well. Simply stating, all we're asking was a fair and transparent process, and one where a thumb is not being put on the scale to unfairly disadvantage a community that has already been historically disadvantaged. And we know with a fair process that Maryland will prevail. I'd now like to turn it over to my friend and colleague, our county executive from Prince George's County, Angela Alsobrooks.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the governor for his leadership, and I'd like to also thank all of our colleagues who are here, our federal delegation who have been stalwarts, really in representing our state and our county in this process now for over a decade. And so I'd like to thank each of them for their leadership. We had a very productive meeting this morning. I was proud to be with these other leaders who presented to GSA. Administrator Carnahan started our meeting by making certain expressions. She indicated that this is the largest single project in GSA's history and that it would be very important to the agency that it would be handled in a fair and transparent way, and also indicated that she wanted to make sure that the United States interests were protected. We submit to you that locating the FBI in Maryland serves the interest of the United States. It is clear that this process has gone on for over 10 years. There was a very, very competitive process. Prince George's County competed in that process. This started with 35 sites and resulted in the selection of 3 final sites. 2 of those sites are in Prince George's County and 1 is in Virginia. It is so clear to anyone who looks at the criteria that's been set out over the last 10 years that Prince George's County objectively is the strongest site for the FBI headquarters to be relocated. This site results in preserving taxpayer dollars. You've heard the governor say, and you'll hear others say as well, that we estimate that locating the FBI in Virginia would cost taxpayers upwards of $1 billion additional dollars. $1 billion additional dollars. I think it's very difficult to say that it is in the best interest of the United States to locate this very important asset in a place that would cost taxpayers more money. But additionally, our Commander-in-Chief, President Biden, has said very clearly in his executive orders that he expected equity to be a part of the discussion now about how we balance federal assets, how we place federal assets in ways that do not continue the systemic disparity that we have seen over time. Now, I just want to say one thing. Our friends in Virginia, following our last statement, went out and said, oh, if diversity is the issue, if equity is the issue, then you ought to select us because we have more people here with red, blue, or green hair than any place else. How insulting to the concept of equity. The equity that we are talking about is equity that has seen the federal government spend upwards of $460 billion in Virginia and only $121 billion in Prince George's County. Let me make that even clearer. Fairfax County, which is what we're talking about, the federal government has spent $460 billion in that jurisdiction and $121 billion in Prince George's County. That's the equity that we're talking about that has allowed that jurisdiction, Fairfax County, to be listed as one of the wealthiest counties in America, the second wealthiest when we talk about income and talk about wealth. Prince George's County is 107th on that list. So what we're talking about in this moment is a site that the GSA has determined, speaking of Prince George's County, is a suitable site where the FBI can complete its mission. That's not the question. That's not the question. It's not on the table. What we're talking about in this moment is what's also best for the United States and for the people of the United States. And we believe that Maryland's site allows us to achieve the equity that we're talking about, the fairness that we're talking about, and allows the agency to complete its mission. So I want to thank again all of the leaders who are here. I want to thank Senator Card, and thank you so much to Congressman Hoyer and Congressman Ivey. I want to thank our Lieutenant Governor, also Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Trone and others who have kept this alive for us. And we're so hopeful that if we make the decision based on the criteria that GSA has set out on its own, hands down, Prince George's County wins this competition, and this site will come to Maryland. Thank you.
Well, first, I want to acknowledge we had a very successful consultation, I think, with the GSA and the FBI. I want to thank Governor Moore and our entire team for putting together a presentation that makes it very convincing that Prince George's County, the 2 sites, wins overwhelmingly in all 5 categories that was set up in the site plan if we have objective standards in judging those criteria. Now, we are here today because of action of the United States Congress. In the Omnibus Appropriation Bill, the GSA was required to have these consultations. And I can tell you that was done because Congress was upset when they saw the September selection plan as not being one that you could defend. It showed a clear bias. It was not consistent with congressional intent. It questioned the integrity of the process. And that's why GSA was asked to have these consultations and to look at changes in the selection plan criteria and weighting issues. We made that point very clearly, and we went through all the different criteria as to why Prince George's County has the two best sites, whether it's cost, or whether it's transit, or whether it's a site being ready today, or the mission. We have the best sites. But the extra area that we added was equity. That was an issue that the President Biden added. This is hands down in Prince George's County. The only historically underserved communities are in Prince George's County. We made those points very clear. And we made the point that if you're going to restore the integrity in the process, if you're going to remove the perception of bias that the thumb was put on the scale to favor Virginia, if you're going to comply with congressional intent, and if you're going to comply with President Biden's executive orders on equity, one which was issued after the site selection plan was issued in September last year, then you need to adjust the plan's criteria. And we specifically asked that we have equal weight for all 5 criteria. If you're going to do one, make cost the most important, which was weighted only at 10%, whereas mission tied to Quantico was weighted at 35%. We asked that that be changed. We asked that Quantico be eliminated because that was never mentioned in any of the congressional actions. We asked that the equity criteria be judged the same as the other 4 criteria are being judged, which was not in the original plan. We made these points, and I think it's very clear as each of us made our presentations. If you give us a level playing field, the FBI will be located in Prince George's County, Maryland. With that, let me turn it over to my colleague on the Appropriations Committee that was very much engaged in this process from the beginning, Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. It's great to be here with Governor Moore, with County Executive Alsobrooks, with all my colleagues. We did have a very productive discussion with representatives from the GSA and the FBI. And as my colleagues have said, all 3 sites meet the FBI mission requirements. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been on the finalist lists. 2 in Prince George's County, 1 in Virginia, all of them meet FBI mission requirements. As the county executive said, the list started with 35, so they boiled it down to 3 that they agree are viable sites to meet the mission. So then you've got to look at these other factors that are important to Americans, important to taxpayers, and the 2 factors where there's a huge divergence between the 2 Prince George's County sites and the Virginia site are equity. President Biden has been very clear in an executive order that providing equity in federal investments is a whole of government effort. Whole of government includes the GSA. Whole of government includes the FBI. And in case they didn't get the message the first time he did it, in the earliest days of his administration, he just recently issued another one. The other is cost. Now look around here, we're all federal taxpayers. GSA says that it wants to get value for the taxpayer. They say that's one of their very top priorities. So how is weighting the cost of site preparation and getting everything going only weighted 10% as part of their evaluation? The lowest weighting was given the cost to the federal taxpayer. GSA says this is their top priority, but they only gave it 10%. And let me tell you, when it comes to cost, there is no dispute. The Virginia costs, the cost of the Springfield site is far higher, way higher than the Maryland site. In fact, one of the Maryland sites is free to the federal taxpayer because of contributions from the state and county government, free to the federal taxpayer. The Virginia site has 2 current tenants on that site that have to be moved. It's going to take them time to move. The GSA has conceded they'll have to demolish the current buildings and structures for those 2 tenants. That's a cost. And if you look at the 2018 document that was put together by the FBI and the GSA themselves, which we presented to them, you will find that even if you use GSA's criteria, it will cost over $1 billion more to the federal taxpayer to go to the Virginia site as opposed to either of the two Prince George's County sites. $1 billion. GSA regularly comes up before Capitol Hill and says they don't have enough money to do their operation, but they give $1 billion additional cost to the taxpayer, only 10% weight. That will not fly. And we made that clear, and we're very pleased that GSA and the FBI will be taking our views into consideration as they reevaluate this. Now let me turn this over to somebody who's been just an incredible leader on this for well over a decade, maybe 2 decades, Congressman Steny Hoyer.
Thank you very much, Senator Van Hollen. Thank you very much, Governor and Lieutenant Governor Miller and Governor Moore. Thank you very much for your leadership. You're new to leadership in the governorship. You're not new to leadership. You're not new to motivating people. And thank you very much for leading this effort.
Thank you.
And Angela Alsop-Brooks, we are so proud in Prince George's County of Angela Alsop-Brooks, an extraordinary county executive, an extraordinary advocate for the people of Prince George's County, who has been in law enforcement much of her elected life. So she understands the needs for law enforcement. FBI is a law enforcement agency. Glenn Ivey, my colleague from Prince George's County, as well. I've been involved in this process since 2009, September of 2009. Director Mueller came to my office and said, we need to get out of a building that no longer serves the FBI and no longer serves the American people. And in fact, at this point in time, is falling down to the extent that they have nets around the building so people walking on the sidewalks will not be injured. The first time Quantico was mentioned as a consideration for siting of this building was in 2022. I've been at this since 2009. Met with Mr. Comey, met with numerous FBI officials, met with GSA officials. Never was this mentioned as a criteria for where the FBI ought to be cited. And not only did they adopt it in 22, but they made it 35% out of 100% of the determination being made. The Congress, as Senator Cardin has pointed out, was very concerned about that. And the Congress passed in its omnibus in December the requirement that GSA meet with us and with Virginia to determine the credibility and viability is the word that was used, of that assessment of strength of issues. There is no one here in this group that doubts that we win on the 4 other criteria. So, but for that ranking. So what we said in our, Mr. Van Hollen and I and the Appropriations Committee, will do each criteria weighted the same, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. And that's what this discussion was about. This was a productive meeting in this sense. GSA assured us, and the FBI assured us, they would go back to the table based upon the information that we had all given them and reassess the correctness of this process. The administrator said at the beginning that it was fair and it was transparent. My view is, frankly, it was neither. Not fair because the criteria of 35% for the location of the building close to not only the Quantico but other FBI facilities was never mentioned. Not transparent because we learned that at the very last minute. So I am hopeful that the GSA and the FBI will in fact go back to the drawing board with the taxpayer considered, and certainly with the mission of the FBI uppermost in its mind, will not be affected by any of the location issues. The mission will be served by the building we build that would be built at any one of these 3 sites. The cost, however, will be substantially more and take substantially longer time to do at the Springfield site. So that we look forward to further consultations with the GSA and the FBI. I look forward to getting some statistics that we asked for and other questions answered. Governor, you asked a question, a number of others did. I am looking forward to getting those answers. We will then have additional conversations with both the GSA and the FBI as to the appropriateness of making a selection based upon the merits of each of those sites. I now yield to my colleague who also represents both of these sites.
Thank you, Congressman Hoyer. I want to be brief, but I was very pleased today. I think we made it clear to the federal government that we can kill two birds with one stone with this. We can strike a blow against federal redlining in Prince George's County and at the same time save taxpayers over $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion. So I'm hoping we'll have a chance for future consultations with them. They're going to go back and digest what we gave them today. But I think the evidence is clear that we ought to win on the merits. It makes sense. It's long overdue, decades overdue as a matter of fact, and hopefully they'll come back with the right decision. So I want to introduce, for transportation issues, Lieutenant Governor Miller.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aruna Miller, Lieutenant Governor, and I also happen to be a transportation engineer. So first off, I want to say thank you to the incredible Maryland delegation that we have here, and to the phenomenal County Executive, Angela Alsobrooks, and to my friend and my partner, Governor Wes Moore. Governor Wes Moore and I ran on a mission to leave no one behind, and that includes the entire 6 million Marylanders that are here in our state. We will not be left behind. That's why we're here today, to fight for the FBI and its location to be considered in Prince George's County. Now, you've heard the saying, location, 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 right? Well, in order to make a location successful, you need to be able to have direct access to transportation infrastructure, and there should be options out there. And so the reason why the two locations in Maryland are so much better than the one in Virginia, I'll give you those reasons. Both Maryland sites, Landover and Greenbelt, offer multimodal options via car, metro, commuter rail, bus, bike, or on foot. Both sites meet and exceed the FBI criteria for the proximity to multiple major commercial airports. And both sites offer flexibility, as they are also serviced by Prince George's County's The Bus, a local bus route providing connections to key destinations throughout Prince George's County and beyond. And both sites are in close proximity to Maryland's numerous higher education institutions, which cements a pipeline for the FBI to train, recruit, and retain highly skilled and diverse workforce that reflect the community that it serves. Furthermore, Greenbelt location is literally 140 feet away, or 140 steps away from the Metro and MARC access. It provides direct metro access to Reagan National Airport, direct access to downtown DC without ever having to switch lines. Greenbelt will also connect to the Purple Line, a 16-mile light rail currently under construction that will connect to 21 major hubs across the DMV. The Landover site provides access to 3 metro stations within a 2.5-mile radius. And most importantly, both Maryland sites are ready to go in every sense. Transportation is no exception. There are already thriving trans hubs with streamlined connections throughout the DMV region. As a transportation engineer, I understand commuters' habits and the need to have reliable, accessible, and user-friendly transit. Thus, it's important to select a site that provides more transportation choices, saves time, and minimizes our dependence on single-occupancy vehicle. The Maryland sites are truly the optimal locations for the FBI headquarters. And now I would like to introduce my dear friend and the terrific congressman from Maryland's 6th Congressional District, Congressman Mufime. I'm sorry. 7th. Sorry
Who
about that.
in the hell is counting, right? Well, here we go, a bit more redundancy, so bear with us because not everything has been said by everybody. Two things. First, I want to say a word about how we got here and why we're so fired up. And then secondly, just to say something about the rules change and why a sports metaphor will help you understand why we are doing what we are doing. This began, as you heard, years and years ago with Steny Hoyer and Ben Cardin working to find a way to get Maryland to be a finalist out of 30-some proposals to locate the largest project ever of the GSA. And they went at it over and over and over again, and year after year. And it narrowed and it narrowed, and so much so that this time last year, it was clear to many of us that Maryland was going to get the selection. We won on everything you can think of. Now, most of all, we won on cost. And as has been said earlier, you just can't tell taxpayers, oh, we're going to make you pay $1 billion or $1.5 billion more because we like this site just because it's closer to where we want to be. No, those days are over with, and that argument does not hold up. We went on equity, we went on diversity, we went on transportation, as you just heard. But most of all, we win technically and realistically because this is the right thing to do. We started out believing that there was going to be one set of rules, that the 100-yard dash was going to be the 100-yard dash. And then when we start to run in the game, all of a sudden, it's a 200-yard dash. And then in September of last year, somebody put their finger on the scale and changed the rules. So all of a sudden, the things that we worked around and prepared for and developed were no longer as important. Everything else seemed to rise. Cost went down in terms of a legitimate aspect of this, and everything you can think of, particularly proximity to Quantico, became an issue. Now, you can't be any closer to Virginia while you're in Virginia. Okay, let's start with that. So that was unfair. Secondly, and most importantly, is that every time we tried to bring this up, no one wanted to deal with it. So finally, doing something right, the Congress of the United States said, oh no, you have to go back and look at this in a fair lens and be prepared to do a reset. And so that's how we got here today. This was our day in court, if you will have it. And in reality, this is, in fact, the fourth quarter of this process. And we came here playing like we're under the 2-minute rule. And that's why you see such a united delegation, winning on every aspect that was ever raised. And we hope and pray that at the end of the day, fairness will rule, equity will rule, the sort of disinvestment that we've seen in communities like Prince George's County will end, and that people will have reason to believe that you can be right and you can win. Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask Governor Moore to come back and wrap us up. Thank you.
Oh, you got Sarbanes. You're not Governor Moore, but
yeah. I'm not governor yet. We're so lucky to have Governor Moore here today, but just as a business guy, I mean, I sit on the Appropriations Committee, I sit on the subcommittee that appropriates the FBI. How in the world do you not count $1.5 billion of better cost to the taxpayer and say that's 10%? That's not 10% of this issue. That's like the whole issue. $1 billion, $1.5 billion, we got to count that. We should count it twice. Second point is, we've got a real issue here on a red herring. The last minute for Virginia to drop in a red herring, the proximity to Quantico. That doesn't sound right. That sounds, we got some big problems here underlying. It's where the FBI folks live is in Fairfax County. They've put their finger on the scale, and the GSA has been complicit on that finger on the scale. But to weight that 35% is pure insanity. It's wrong. The future folks in the FBI, when it goes to Prince George's County, where it belongs, will be living often in Prince George's County. There's going to be a change, and the FBI needs to get with the program on this. So thank you. Now we have Congressman Sarbanes.
Thank you, and I want to thank the governor, and I want to thank the county executive and our delegation. I just want to emphasize again something that Congressman Mfume said, which is that the Congress of the United States in the last couple of months instructed the GSA to do a reassessment, a relook, a reevaluation of this process. That's what we were presenting today. And from that relook, there needs to come a reset, as Congressman Mfume said. If there is a reset and the process is fair, then Maryland wins this competition. Governor?
Thank you so much, Congressman. Thank you. This time, if we'd love to field any questions we might have. Yes.
Governor, when Virginia had their event almost a month ago, right?
Yeah.
They were exuberant. They were laughing. They were having a good time of it.
Yeah.
You all came out of this meeting today looking very serious and very concerned. Have they made up their minds already about this, and are you trying to turn that ship right now? And has GSA told you how soon this decision is going to be?
Yeah, I think we come out of that meeting understanding how serious this decision is. I mean, this is the biggest and largest project that GSA has ever decided on. So this is very serious business, and I understand why people in Virginia they might have seemed exuberant because last September the rules were changed to inherently benefit them, and what today was, it was a challenge of that. And it was simply saying if you stick to the rules that were laid out on every single category that were laid out in the original rules and the original intent, Maryland wins on every single one. And one of the few takeaways that I think we took from today's meeting was, first, GSA was very clear that the indication of the change that happened in September, that is not locked in stone. And they are now going to go back with all the information and all the data and actually be able to have an opportunity to both work in coordination with us, but also reassess that decision in September to put such a heavy weight on one of the options. The other thing was all the data that was laid out, especially when we talk about what Senator Van Hollen laid out in terms of putting together the aspect of cost. How this is going to cost upwards of $1 billion more to put in Virginia. Nobody challenged that number. No one at GSA or FBI said, no, that's incorrect. And so this is going to make the best argument for the American taxpayer to put inside of Prince George's County. Also, when looking at the executive order, the two executive orders that President Biden has put out around equity, and saying that, and I think as a county executive so smartly and rightfully pointed out, do not make a mockery of the president nor his executive orders. That when we're talking about we need to make sure that there's a lens on equity in every single facet of the administration and every single bureau, every single agency, do not make a joke of that. And so the thing that I think we continue to push on today, and while I think we leave here confident, but also leave here understanding the seriousness of this is a decision that is going to have a legacy-defining impact for the Biden administration and a true generational impact on the impacted communities. There's only one right answer, and that is for this building to end up in Maryland.
Did you get an answer from any GSA official on why it was put in to have the quotas being quantified?
So the only indication that they gave to us was at the time of the decision that they wanted to make sure that other elements were being factored in. So the honest answer is no. There was no definite answer as to what were the core indicators that were putting and making that change. Now, they were very clear that that decision that was made in September is not locked in stone, and that they would go back and be able to reevaluate everything after speaking with us and speaking with Virginia, and we as a delegation and we as Team Maryland plan to hold them to that.
Did you feel like you got a fair hearing today, that everyone who sat in on that meeting were equally heard and your arguments were heard? And did they give you a timeline on when they'll make a decision? Because as the representative mentioned, you're in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, we do feel that that the decision makers, I think as our leader Congressman Hoyer set out, the decision makers were in this room. and people who are going to have influence as to what is going to be the final decision. And so we do feel like we got a fair hearing. We're assuming we got a fair hearing, and we're assuming that the follow-up that was promised by them is going to be real, is going to be consistent, and is going to be honored. We're also anxious to hear from the opinion from the White House on this. This is an important legacy-defining statement and item for the White House and from the Biden administration. And so we're hopeful that the White House is also going to make sure their opinion is also heard in this as well.
Should the president weigh in on this? Should he make the final call? Should he step in? Are you hoping that he'll step in?
We are very much hoping that the president continues to lean on these agencies to help them understand what his personal opinion on this. He's been very clear on making sure that we are going to both make sure that we are going at the best decision that's going to advantage the American taxpayer, and that equity is important and is not to be made a mockery of. And so, yes, we are hoping that the President of the United States himself also puts his opinion as to where this building should be located.
Can you talk about what is lost for Prince George's County if it does not get the FBI building? This is also for county executive. But also, why couldn't these same things that are attached to the FBI building, such as generational wealth and a legacy, be established with the NASA building or the research center?
I'll let you take first.
Thank you. That's a great question, and I'll answer it this way. You say what is lost? It's already been lost. All of the opportunities to grow Prince George's County's economy in the same way that Fairfax has. And again, the numbers speak for themselves. This is not something we believe has happened. If you look at the median income, for example, of Fairfax County, which is about $139,000 or $140,000, compared to Prince George's County's median income, that is $90,000. If you look at the fact that, again, the federal government, this is taxpayer dollars that we should all have an equal opportunity to have invested across the country. But we've invested $460 billion of it in Fairfax County and $121 billion of it in Prince George's County. These kinds of investments yield all kinds of economic benefits to various communities. If we look, for example, at the benefit of having the Pentagon located in Northern Virginia, these are policy decisions that the federal government has the opportunity to make. And look at how Northern Virginia has developed as a result of the policy decisions of the past. 1941, to be exact, is when we decided the Pentagon would go there. But these kinds of decisions grow those communities, and you can look at Prince George's County, look at the fact that we're 102 in terms of wealth and income compared to Fairfax County, that is number two. Number two. So there's no comparison. And again, the facts speak for themselves. So when we talk about equity, we don't want to be boxed into some sort of fantastical. This is an actual disparity that can be borne out in numbers. And so the loss has already been experienced by Prince George's. We're asking now this agency to follow the lead of our commander-in-chief, who has said that it is his priority, and he said it on more than one occasion, that we will correct these decisions that were made in past years that have really given benefit to communities at the expense of other communities similar to Prince George's County. Prince George's County, it's important for me to say this, we're not asking for anything we don't deserve. We competed in a competition with 35 sites. In the final 2 of the final 3 sites we won. We were determined to be able to fulfill the mission of the FBI. They were able to fulfill their mission at these sites that we, based on all of the criteria that the others were judged on, everything from transportation to environmental impact, all of those areas, Prince George's rose to the top. This site deserves to be in Prince George's and deserves to be in Maryland.
Time for 2 more.
Well, the only thing that they've indicated to us is that this is of highest priority, and they plan on this decision being made soon. So there was no definitive timeline that was given to us, but we do know that we feel very confident in the pitch that we made. We know that Virginia will be here and also have the conversation with them, but we look forward to next steps, and we look forward to them reevaluating the criteria that they've laid out prior. Don't know if there'll be another in-person. We are very excited and prepared to meet with them anytime and anywhere in any capacity to be able to make our case, because we know that as Maryland makes its case, that there's only one right decision, and that's for the FBI building to be in the state of Maryland. Well, I think that the president has been consistent about how important equity is inside of the administration. Not just putting together one executive order, but 2 executive orders, instructing his departments, instructing the agencies that as they are making these decisions, that these type of issues and the lens of equity should be considered and will be considered in all the decisions that are being made. And I think when you look at all the key criteria in the areas that we've made out and the arguments that we have made, that this is going to be better on cost for the American taxpayer, that we have the transportation assets that are ready right now to be utilized and leveraged, that we are the only site of the finalist sites that is ready to be built on right now, that we have a chance, when you look at the mission, especially with Director Ray talking about a huge component of the future mission of the FBI is going to be cyber, that we are actually the state that has the infrastructure and the assets right now that can be leveraged to meet that new mission, but then also looking at this view of equity. So we are very clear that this is a legacy-defining decision for the Biden administration, and we believe that when the decision is made to move the building to the state of Maryland, it will be a continuation of that commitment, and you can see how that executive order and the words that have been put together, this is what it looks like in action when you make sure that the state of Maryland is seen and this building ends up in our jurisdictions.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Take care, Rona. Be well. All right.
Hey, Ben, we should talk huddle quickly on this issue about land.